Good evening, everybody. The leaders of the Senate Intelligence Committee are co-conspirators now, it seems, in the Russia witch hunt that they have helped create and to lead. Chairman Senator Richard Burr has led his committee's so-called investigation for 9 months. The result? Not one iota of evidence of Russian collusion with the Trump administration or vice versa. And not one iota of evidence produced by the FBI's more than year-long investigation that preceded the Senate's grandstanding. In all, about 21 months of investigations and nothing to show for it, period. Instead, Chairman Burr has served as nothing more than a tool for the panel's top Democrat, Senator Mark Warner. Warner's press secretary yesterday baiting news and media outlets, urging reporters to tune in to a news conference today, promising the committee would make news in the Russia investigation. What did they produce? More grandstanding and innuendo. Burr and Warner informing the public that 9 months into their investigation, they have absolutely no evidence the Trump campaign in any way coordinated or colluded with Russia. Perhaps unaware of their overwhelming irony, they presented all of this in big posters to show how they've wasted taxpayer money, claiming to have interviewed more than 100 witnesses while holding 11 open hearings. The result? Again, absolutely nothing. The committee obviously should realize it's time to shut down their witch hunt, but Senator Burr just can't bring himself to face reality.
Now, it's safe to say that the inquiry has expanded slightly. Initial interviews and document review generated hundreds of additional requests on our part for information. It identified many leads that expanded our initial inquiry.
The senator obviously thinks he's being very cute. It's pure grandstanding by Senator Burr, seeking media attention, and Senator Warner doing much the same. His puppet master role in the witch hunt is something he seems to enjoy, and Burr as well. The nonsense doesn't stop there. Fox News chief intelligence correspondent Catherine Herridge in Washington with the latest for us. Good evening, Catherine.
Thank you. After 9 months of investigation and more than 100 witness interviews, Senate Intelligence Committee leadership said on Capitol Hill today that they didn't have any evidence or concrete evidence of coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia, but they did tell reporters that there's more work ahead.
Collusion is still open, that we continue to investigate both intelligence and witnesses, and that we're not in a position where we will come to any type of temporary finding on that until we've completed the process.
The senator said the next phase will include public hearings, inviting the president's longtime personal attorney Michael Cohen to testify October 25th, though a source close to Cohen said his appearance is not firm. And the committee has an invitation out to Facebook, Google, and Twitter to publicly testify on November 1st. Asked about Russian-backed ads during the campaign, the senator said the goal was division and not helping a particular candidate or party.
We feel that they used the social media firms both in terms of paid advertising and what I believe is more problematic, but created false accounts and others that would drive interest towards stories or groups. And generally those stories or groups were to sow chaos and drive division in our country.
Senators could not determine the credibility of the unverified salacious Trump dossier that was compiled by the former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele. The dossier, of course, helped kickstart the FBI's counterintelligence investigation last year into alleged Russian collusion. The senator said Steele refused to identify his sources and who paid him.
Unfortunately, the committee has hit a wall. We have on several occasions made attempts to contact Mr. Steele, to meet with Mr. Steele, to include personally the vice chairman and myself as two individuals making that connection. Those offers have gone unaccepted.
And the senators told reporters the Russian campaign continued after the election in November, and they do expect a more aggressive, targeted campaign during the midterm election slew.
Catherine, thank you very much, as always. Catherine Herridge from Washington. Our first guest tonight is outraged over the obvious incompetence of the Senate Intelligence Committee and an investigation that has become nothing more than an insult to the American taxpayer. Joining us tonight is Chris Farrell, Director of Investigations and Research for Judicial Watch. Let me ask you, if I may, Chris, first, perhaps a question you don't often get asked. You run a lot of investigations. How would you score the Intelligence Committee's efforts to this point?
It's a failure. If my investigators on my staff came back to me after 9 months and gave the mealy-mouthed, double-talk answers that Mr. Burr and Mr. Warner presented to the public, I'd fire them. Well,
Senator Warner outdid himself and just pure blathered in response to the questions. I mean, this is preposterous. And yet Mitch McConnell is not talking, obviously, with the chair and the ranking member to say, come on, guys. No one is trying to make sense or keep this in proportion. This is, I don't know if the right word is a witch hunt, but it is an obvious insult to not only the American taxpayer, but the intelligence of Americans throughout the country. To have this go forward without any evidence of any kind, no crime defined, no crime found. What in the world do they, and by the way, I'm talking with Alan Dershowitz just the other day, who said point blank, collusion is not a crime. He can't condone anything that they're doing.
Well, as I've said many times on this show, no one can name the criminal predicate. No one can tell you what law was broken. And in that regard, you know, unfortunately, Senator Burr serves as a glorified sock puppet to Senator Warner's 2020 campaign that he's getting ginned up right now. This is all, you know, ad soundbite material. The other thing is they've produced supposedly 4,000 pages of witness testimony. Make it public. Put it up on the internet, and let's crowdsource it. I bet you I can come up with some conclusions to draw.
Well, I don't doubt that for a moment. Burr says that he's hit the wall. The chairman, the hardworking chairman, has hit the wall with the Trump dossier from the former British spy, Chris Steele, who, by the way, we still don't know if he was on the FBI payroll, who was throwing money at him. GPS fusion has just sort of disappeared from the conversation here. Teneo hasn't been brought up lately. Somebody has been, well, hard at work to keep them below the radar and certainly out of media attention. This smells to high heaven, and if anything, it looks like the Senate Intelligence Committee itself, with its maladroit insistence on grandstanding and persisting in the face of no evidence, they look like they are involved in the same web that is being woven across Washington.
Well, let me give the Senate Intelligence Committee some leads. I'll give them some pointers. Start off with the DNC server, then go over and have Debbie Wasserman Schultz come in and explain her relationship with the Awan brothers. Let's look at that for a while. You want to find some Russian collusion? You want to find some foreign intelligence involvement? Foreign contact and control? Look at the Awan brothers and that little gang running the email and servers for Debbie Wasserman Schultz and about 40 other Democratic members. And then ask the Republican leadership why they aren't saying the same thing that I am right now. These are legitimate, open counterintelligence questions where we have real evidence of bad actors.
Real
why aren't we looking at that? Correct.
And Chris, this is just beyond comprehension that Burr continues to act like I mean, he's become Warner's lackey here. It is appalling to watch. Surely somebody on his staff, someone in his family, should point out to the good senator that you look awfully foolish here.
It is embarrassing. I don't know how he gets up and makes those presentations and then lets Warner go on his little tirade. It's really disrespectful to his own office. It's a shame.
Yeah. Chris Farrell, as always, great to have you with us. I wish we had much more time. We've got a lot more to discuss, and let's do that in the next few days if we can. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Lou.
Good to have you with us. We're coming right back. There's a lot more to cover. An incredible lineup of guests tonight, including noted conservative best-selling author American extraordinaire Pat Buchanan on the effort to subvert the Trump presidency. Stay with us. President Trump and the First Lady in Las Vegas paying their respects to the victims and the first responders who saved so many lives and all affected by the horrendous shooting tragedy Sunday night.
It's a very sad thing. We're going to pay our respects and to see the police who have done really a fantastic job in a very short time.
We take up the historic number of national crises that the president must contend with. We'll be talking with Congressman Mike Kelly here next. And now comes a report that reveals Russia has been carrying out cyber attacks on smartphones belonging to NATO troops in Europe. We'll have that story and much more straight ahead. Stay with us. President Trump spent much of the day in Las Vegas, less than 72 hours after the shooting rampage that left 59 dead and more than 500 others wounded. The president showed great compassion today as he comforted and consoled victims and their families at the University Medical Center, the Level 1 Trauma Center. He even invited some of those folks to the White House. And later in the day, he was assuring survivors they would never be alone, that America would remain by their side. President Trump and the First Lady were there to comfort them. They lavished high praise on law enforcement, first responders during their stop at Las Vegas Police Headquarters. The president telling them a grateful nation is indeed grateful to them for their bravery, their swift action that kept the tragedy from escalating even further.
I will tell you, the people of Nevada and the extraordinary city have shown the world their incredible character, courage, and resolve. Nevada really is a very, very special place.
And our next guest praising President Trump for his leadership in the wake of the national tragedy in Las Vegas. Joining us now to talk about Mr. Trump's success in trying to comfort those survivors and victims and lift the nation's spirits in a time of crisis. Congressman Mike Kelly of Pennsylvania. He's a member of the House Ways and Means Committee. And Congressman, good to have you with us. I think it's extraordinary. We did a little math. This president, in the course of dealing with all that has transpired, Hurricane Harvey, a Category 5 and a Category 4 hurricane hitting the country within an unimaginably short period of time. The tragedy, obviously, in Las Vegas, all of the issues he's dealing with, it is just, he's traveled over almost 26,000 miles in just a little, just under 2 months. I mean, this is, it's an amazing performance. I don't know many folks, I don't know of any president who's equaled him in that expenditure of energy and concern and instinctive effort to comfort the nation.
Well, he's a real person. And you know, we've often heard that 90% of life is showing up, because when you show up, people know you care. Who's shown up more than this president at every single turn? When something horrible happened, he's there with you. And I think when people think back on their lives about when people showed up, oh, sure, it's fun to show up when you're celebrating, but when you're grieving, when you're really hurting, those are the people you remember the most. Who showed up for me when I needed it the most? And this president and this First Lady have been incredible models of what America really is about. And thank God he's not a standard politician with talking points. He speaks from his heart about things that affect every single American. I find that just so genuine and so refreshing to have somebody that talks that way, not as a polished politician, but as a straight-talking business person who loves this country and has given up so much of his private life to serve.
Yeah, you're right. This is a president who says the hell with political correctness. And if the national left-wing media can't handle that, too bad. If the left can't handle it, the Dems can't handle it, too bad. The American people are, in point of fact, deeply appreciative of a straight-talking, truth-telling chief executive running the country.
He's a true leader. There's no question about it. He is a true leader at every turn. He shows up. He shows up long, and he shows up strong, and he shows up for every single American. He doesn't parse it. He covers the whole gamut of who's out there and who's been affected. No, you got to love this man. You got to love this family for giving up what they've given up to serve.
Yeah, I think that's lost a lot. This is a president who is, he's had to sacrifice an extraordinary level of comfort, a lifestyle that most of us can only dream of. And he's done it for the nation and for the American people. I want to turn to the other effort that seems to be just absolutely hamstrung and tied up, and that is, again, a legislative initiative. On the Ways and Means Committee, I know that you and Congressman Chairman Brady and all your committee working hard on this tax cut, tax reform, if you want the Speaker's version of it. I've got to tell you, Congressman, it's not ready. It's just not baked.
No, but it's not. But again, and Lou, we've talked about this. We went from a blueprint to a framework, and we're filling it in now. But I will tell you this: there's been nobody more open to the discussion than Chairman Brady, and he keeps telling all our members, "Come and talk to me. Come and talk to me. We want to hear from the people we're affecting the most." And that is something that I think is really refreshing. From the 7 years I've been here, I've never seen it this open and this much involvement.
And yet we still have so many questions. How are you going to incentivize repatriation of $3-4 trillion, whatever it may be, that's parked by corporate America overseas in bank accounts? How in the world are you going to bring some parity for small business? And why, if this is a middle-class tax cut, and the president promises it is, don't we see the middle class getting the preponderance of the tax cut?
No, but the middle class is low, and I think that we get confused.
I'm not talking about trickle-down stuff. I'm talking I'm talking about, I mean, I've listened to Gary Cohn. I've listened to Steve Mnuchin, and they'll say, well, we can't guarantee everyone in the middle class gets a tax cut. Why the hell not? If it's a middle class tax cut, then deliver.
Yeah, look, and I understand where you're coming from, and a lot of us feel this way, but they are being cautious on what they say, because too often anything they say gets taken to the floor, and it's like, oh my gosh, you promised this and you didn't do exactly what you said you were going to do.
Congressman, you know you're not going to deny Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi their time on the floor just chewing your guys' cuffs. I mean, it's going to be rough.
Right. Well, it is going to be rough, and I don't think the country's ever seen it more partisan than it is right now.
Right.
But if you're going to rely on Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi to sell tax cuts, I think you're talking to the wrong folks. But what you want to talk about is, what are we actually doing to encourage growth?
For a thing.
I'm with you. But you know what? What we're looking for is pro-growth tax reform. We know that by making sure that corporations are where they need to be globally competitive, we put people back to work. We get middle-income people and lower-income people having more take-home pay.
I just want to know that it's a middle-class tax cut, and I want to know what the middle class is going to get out of it, because they've been screwed for 25 years in this country, and you know it, and the president knows it, and that's why he said it's got to be a middle-class tax cut.
And this is a president that said very clearly, and I was just with him a week ago across, he said, forget about worrying about the wealthy. They'll take care of themselves. Middle income, lower middle income people. Well, you know what? Listen, nothing's finished yet, but I want to tell you, his concentration, and it will come out of the White House, by the way. You know that. That's what happened when President Reagan was there. His commitment is to middle income and lower income people to make sure that their lives get better. They have to have more take-home pay. But in order to get the more take-home pay, we've got to look at what we're doing globally and make sure that we can compete globally, and we have more production that allows them to have higher wages.
I'm not going to worry about? I'm not going to worry about a bunch of U.S. multinationals who in many cases have outright oligopolic power and strength. I'm not going to worry about them. I am going to worry about the middle class, a working man and woman, just like the president does.
Me too.
And I think that as soon as Speaker Ryan and Mitch McConnell come to glory over that issue, we're going to have some tax reform.
We are going to have a genuine tax reform and genuine growth in America.
Congressman, great to have you with us as always.
Thanks, Lou.
Appreciate it. Congressman,
thank you so
Mike
much.
Kelly. Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. Do you believe the Senate Intelligence Committee should be investigating clear evidence of Democratic wrongdoing rather than non-existent Russian collusion? I mean, you have to laugh when you hear it. Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook and Instagram, Lou Dobbs Tonight. On Wall Street, another day of records for stocks. Ho-hum, the Dow up 19 points, the S&P up 3, the Nasdaq up 3, all at new record highs. Volume on the big board, just under 3 billion shares. The service sector accelerated last month, hitting the highest level since 2005. Since 2005. And Puerto Rican bonds plunging after President Trump suggested investors may not get paid back. I'd note that James Carville famously said he would like to be reincarnated as the bond market because, quote, you can intimidate everybody. Guaranteed. And a reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. Up next, President Trump standing by his Secretary of State who went a little rogue.
I'm very honored by his comments. It was fake news. It was a totally phony story. Thank you very much. It was made up. It was made up by NBC. They just made it up. Total confidence in Rex. I have total confidence.
Total confidence. It doesn't get much better than that. Should the president keep Tillerson in his administration? We'll talk about that here next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. What do members of President Trump's cabinet do when they behave badly? In previous presidencies, and I'm talking about all 44 of them, insults, open contradiction, public argument, and plain ignorant behavior on the part of presidential cabinet secretaries was, to say the least, exceedingly rare, and even more rarely tolerated by the president. But President Trump, as we've noticed, does things differently. He's saying, it seems, to his wayward secretaries from time to time that he is big enough and strong enough to put up with even insubordination from, well, his insubordinates. Rex Tillerson is a case in point. He tried today to tamp down reports of a rift between he and Mr. Trump. The Secretary of State called the media together to deny reports that he was on the verge of resigning way back in July. Not a very timely argument, but one that Tillerson today decided to make. Tillerson wasn't convincing, however. He did even worse when asked whether he had indeed called the president a moron.
I think it's the most important element of the article is to reaffirm my commitment to this role that President Trump's asked me to serve and to dispel with this notion that I have ever considered leaving.
Did you address the main headline of this story that you called the president a moron? And if not, where do you think these reports or ideas are?
I'm not going to deal with petty stuff like that.
Well, petty or not, he was awfully close to the position of creation, and that means that Tillerson himself was the person, it seems, to have been responsible for the subject even being broached. And the president just days ago had to rein in Tillerson for trying to negotiate apparently with North Korea, and he tweeted that Tillerson is, quote, wasting his time. Defense Secretary Mattis, who was a star and some would say still is in the Trump lineup, not only contradicted the president yesterday, but strayed away from his lane as he seems to do from time to time. Mattis just exceeded himself, telling the Senate the Iran nuclear deal is in our national interest. However, the president has not made a final determination on that issue. And as for the recently ousted Tom Price, Speaker Paul Ryan, who spent more time, it seems, working against rather than for the president, tried apparently to persuade the administration to keep Price despite his ethical issues and his failures in the health care legislation. We have a president to be proud of, make no mistake of it. And the problem is, well, one of the problems is some of his cabinet members aren't acting, well, what is the word? Secretarial. It's time for them to accord the president the respect he and the nation deserve. And the magic word here isn't please, it's now. And now the quotation of the evening. This one from President Eisenhower, who said, quote, only strength can cooperate. Weakness can only beg. We're watching strength at work. We'll be right back. The ineptitude in the Senate Intelligence Committee is astonishing. The chairman and ranking Democrat wasting taxpayer money after they found no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. None at all.
We're not in a position where we will come to any type of temporary finding on that until we've completed the process.
We take up what has been a grandstanding witch hunt on Capitol Hill against the president with Ed Rollins. And a dream wedding come true for this daring couple. We'll show you how they took their love to new heights. Here next. Stay with us. That video coming right up. Joining me now, Ed Rollins, former chief political advisor to the House Republican leadership, esteemed member of the Political Consultant Hall of Fame. He only worked in 3 presidential administrations. Thanks so much for being with us, Ed.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Let's start with, if we may, Tillerson and Mattis. What in the world is going on with the president's cabinet secretaries? I mean, these are accomplished people. They don't seem to understand the value of keeping counsel between themselves and the president.
There's too much thinking out loud. I used to brief when I was in the Reagan White House as the political director. I used to take all the new appointees and I'd say, I want to remind you of one thing. One person here got votes. Everybody else lives off of his appointed power and his reflected power. And so you basically make sure what you're doing is what he wants you to do, and that means you've got to communicate with him. And I think to a certain extent, I think Tillerson made a good faith effort today, but the tragedy of that story was it stepped on the president's speech in Las Vegas. We're now having a duel as opposed to this is the president's agenda. I think Tillerson's a decent man. I think he basically came here with the right reasons, but I don't think he quite understands this president or what this president wants.
Well, I'm sure he would have, while he was running ExxonMobil, been glad to hear one of his subordinates holding forth on what he thinks. What would he have done if he had somebody had said Tillerson's a moron?
Yeah, the subordinate obviously wouldn't be there very long. And I think equally as important, the stories about him leaving, which we've been hearing for months now, certainly are coming out of the State Department. They're not coming out of the White House. And I think to a certain extent that needs to move forward.
Well, the president says he's got full confidence. But, you know, it's interesting to me, there is a certain who cares quality to the story. If he leaves, so what? If he stays, so what? And by the way, it's October.
I go back to the point. There's only one person that got votes in that White House, and he can appoint lots of different people in the course of an administration. He will, and I think to a certain extent, I hope Mr. Tillerson wants to be part of the team and continues to move forward. But if he doesn't, then obviously he'll be replaced. Is
it your political sense that Jared Kushner, Ivanka, the president's daughter, are becoming, if not a liability, a distraction for the White House rather than a resource?
Yes, I always thought it would be best if they would have stayed in New York. They would have had all the influence they want on weekends and what have you. When you went down and became federal employees, obviously it's a disproportionate, as Ronald Reagan said to me one time when I was complaining about his one daughter, Maureen, who was very involved in politics. He said, just be glad I only have one child that's involved in politics. And if you want to tell her anything, feel free to, but I'm not about to. And I think to a certain extent, I think
all fathers can understand President Reagan's view.
I think in the case of Jared is in a lot of things he doesn't have much knowledge about, and he's creating some chaos. I think she's made a good faith effort to try and be a good soldier. I think the administration would be better served when they both go back to New York, which I assume will happen in the near future.
The anti-Trump corporatists, I'm talking about Gary Cohn, I'm talking about a handful of people in the Trump administration. It's getting awkward, and I'm not quite sure if there's going to be a rising comfort level in the Republican Party, the conservative wing of the party, so long as they're there.
Well, I don't think there will be, and I think to a certain extent one of the problems, it's not just a question they were Democrats or big Democrat contributors, it's a philosophy, and the philosophy is not in tune with where the president's philosophy is, and I think the reality is we see this in the tax bill. We've had 9 months, 10 months to work on a tax bill. It's still out there drifting around, and we have to get this bill passed. Equally as important in the health care. We never got a firm health care bill. We had 3 or 4 different versions of it.
And it's starting to look like a replication of that effort.
Well, the bottom line, if you want to get the economy moving, you cut taxes across the board, and you basically get those small businesses focused on. And I think to a certain extent, you're creating more confusion with the different stories that are going out there, talking about a fourth rate, this, that. The reality is you put your plan out, you put your plan out and you run with it, and you defend it once it's out there. Don't think out loud again.
Well, it's sort of funny because, you know, you've got Ryan and McConnell talking about regular order going into this after they get control. And now they're doing sort of what would you call it? A piecemeal, a weak-kneed effort at regular order. Go talk to Kevin Brady, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, if you've got an idea. You know, listen to Paul Ryan make a speech. I mean, it's just this is amateur night.
It really is, and
Capitol
unfortunately, this is a critical thing for this president, for this country, to get this tax thing right, and they've got a very short time frame to get it done.
Ed Rollins, as always, thank you, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Please roll the video. This couple is tying the knot, literally, as they rig slack lines 400 feet above the Grand Canyon for their wedding. That's what you would do. That's what you would do. The two professionals making their way to the middle to make it official and finishing it all off with a bungee jump. Wouldn't you do that? You know, I'm glad that my wife didn't see this video when we were getting married well, it was a long time ago. Up next, Russia opening up a new battlefront with NATO. We'll take up the new threat. General Jack Keane is our guest here next. And later, Pat Buchanan joins me. We'll take up the president's response to all of the crises that the left has prepared for the president. They just keep it coming. We're coming right back. Stay with us. Joining us tonight, retired four-star General Jack Keane, Fox News military analyst. Great to have you with us. Let's take up the issue first of generals in this administration. Somebody had an interesting idea the other day. They said to me, maybe what the Trump administration should do is just start looking for a bunch of generals, 3 stars and higher, and just people the administration with it. And then you hear Mattis answer a question like he did yesterday, but from Senator Angus Keane, a yes or no question, and he jumps the president in terms of a view on the Iran nuclear deal. Which do you think is the way to go?
Well, you just love putting me on a spot here. I'll tell you what.
You've always handled it before. I don't doubt it tonight.
Yeah, okay. Well, Jim's a good friend of mine, as you well know. Right. But look, one of the things when it comes to generals in any administration, and particularly these principal positions they have, in the past, in the positions that they've had in government, they always look at themselves as being independent of the administration, although they serve that administration loyalty. But now they have actual political appointed positions, right, which means they have to serve that administration's political agenda as well as everything else that they're doing. And that is a leap. Yeah. For general officers. And I think they go through some adjustment to this. At the end of the day, they likely don't think of themselves as a political appointee. Yeah. But the truth is they are. Now listen, yeah, with Mattis's question to the Congress, every single time I went before the Congress, we believe you answer the question truthfully to that congressman. But now he's serving a president who hasn't made a decision yet on the nuclear deal, and it's under review. The better answer...
I'm sorry, what is the
better answer for the political appointee who happens to be a general is, Senator, that is under review, and the president knows how I feel about it, and I'm not going to talk about it until he makes a decision.
And he couldn't say to Senator Angus King when he said it's a yes or no question, he couldn't say, Senator, you're an idiot goat.
He's not going to say that.
He can't say that?
No, he's not going to say that.
When you've got a handle like Mad Dog attached to you, I'm ready for him to come out of there.
Yeah, you want him to be colorful. I
do. But in support of the president always, publicly. And I take your point. But I also expect the generals to be adaptive and to recognize new, think of the talent we're talking about with the generals in this administration. Mm-hmm. A little thing like a senator they can handle a lot better now. Let's turn to some other issues that are far more complex and far more important in the long run, certainly, and start with North Korea. We continue to have some noise in the background about talks Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, bringing it forward. Again, the president advancing it with a don't waste your time. We're going to do what has to be done. What's your judgment about what has to be done?
I think the talks that they have, we do have a back channel that's open. It deals with the hostages that are still in North Korea. I don't believe for a minute there's any discussion that's taken place that is going to bring North Korea and the United States together in a bilateral discussion unless all of our conditions are met. And that means they're standing down their program and they're willing to let people go in and verify that. If those conditions aren't met, we're not talking to them. That is the position of the administration, and I don't think Secretary Tillerson is outside of that at all.
All right. General Jack Keane, as always, great to see you. And the general, by the way, just got in from Europe. And you look, I think the expression is splendid.
Stayed up all night watching the Yankee game.
Well, it was worth your while, wasn't it? Congratulations to the Yankees, by the way. Thanks so much, General. China buying its way into the U.S. economy, trying to do so, but President Trump is trying to constrain that. The chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission blocking a Chinese takeover of the Chicago Stock Exchange after the White House urged him to block it. That means that in all likelihood, that deal is dead. Up next, President Trump's compassion in the face of crisis. We'll take that up with Pat Buchanan right after the break. It's a quick break. Stay with us. We're coming right back. In our online poll, we asked, should any CEO whose extreme negligence betrays the public trust be personally subjected to a massive fine and his company be held responsible for restitution? 95% of you say yes, they should. Farthest thing from what's happening these days, as you know. Joining me now, a senior advisor to 3 presidents, twice a candidate for president, and nationally syndicated economist, best-selling author, Pat Buchanan, author of the book Nixon's White House Wars, the battles that made and broke a president and divided America forever. Pat, great to see you. My gosh.
Good to see you, Lou.
You have led a busy, busy life. And what do you think as you watch General Mattis jump the president on the conclusion in a Senate hearing? Mm-hmm. What do you think when you hear Rex Tillerson being told that he's wasting his time thinking of talking to Kim Jong-un?
Well, I think that Mr. Tillerson at State, I think he made a mistake in revealing the fact that we've got back channels to the North Koreans. I don't think there's any need to do that and go public with it. With regard to General Mattis, I think what you saw there was a general in action up on the Hill when he was asked a point-blank question by Senator King, is the Iran deal in the national interest of the United States in your judgment? And he said yes. So I don't fault him that much for it. I think there's a lot of, we just got the knowledge that a lot of us have suspected for a long time that many folks in there think we ought to sustain it because the losses from dumping it over would be greater than any gain.
Right, and it's going to be interesting which way the president does come down on this. Let's turn to the $1 million donations to the resistance movement in the Democratic Party, the anti-Trump resistance groups. I mean, we're talking about non-tax, tax-exempt nonprofits, the money coming from Soros and you name it, and no problem. Fight the president, Lou, no response by the IRS.
Lou, this town, Washington, D.C., is peopled with foundations and public policy institutes and things like that, which are basically tax-exempt money gone for political activity and to affect policy and to change policy and to influence it. You got these folks that going on television, you look at them, they're all supported by tax-exempt institutions. I think it's a real subject that could be well taken up as a whole issue. Right. But let me say this, I don't think the attacks by Soros, et cetera, and the left really damaged Trump. The problem for Trump is keeping that center-right party he's got together.
What are you going to do with Paul Ryan? He didn't want him to fire Tom Price. What are you going to do with Mitch McConnell? He says the president's expectations are too high for lowly artisans like he and the speaker.
Lou, what you got to do is you got to play with the cards you've been dealt. Trump showed up in Washington, and you got Paul Ryan there, and you got Mitch McConnell. And unlike some others, I don't fault Mitch McConnell as much for this reason. I mean, what's he going to do? John McCain, Rand Paul say, and Susan Collins say they're not going to vote to help him out on the health care bill, and they're going to vote the other way. What is he supposed to do? As some congressman said, that in the Senate, Mitch McConnell does not have really a working majority on every issue. It's just not there. I think they need more senators.
Well, they may. Well, I hope you're not suggesting raising the number to like 200 of them, because 100 is more than I can bear. I have to be very honest with you.
Just more than 52 is all I was saying.
Well, I hope it goes the right direction, but I'm not sure that we can count on that. Oh, I want to turn just very quickly to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sure.
Go ahead.
No,
go
ahead, Lou.
I just want to turn to.
No, I just.
Go. I'm going to shut up right now.
No, go. Well, listen, you're going to talk to the issue of that Senate committee hearing.
Right.
That's gone on and on and on, and they refuse to say what they've learned, which is that there's no collusion between the President of the United States and Vladimir Putin, or the top of the Trump campaign and Vladimir Putin. And if they've gone 8 or 9 months and failed to find that collusion, I think it's perhaps time that they say so and remove the cloud of suspicion that's been over the president's head.
Pat,
and the same would be true with the Mueller investigation.
Pat, I'm with you 100%.